My name is Claire Bennett, and I'm 31 years old. If you had asked me that Tuesday morning what betrayal would finally break me, I would have said cheating. Maybe lies. Maybe finding out the man I loved had been living some second life behind my back. I would not have imagined sitting on the edge of my bed by nightfall, shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone, trying to explain to a lawyer that my boyfriend had stolen part of my future and handed it to another woman. Ethan and I had been together just under 2 years. We'd lived together for 6 months in a downtown apartment that always felt warmer when I got home first, and switched on the lamp by the couch. He worked in medical billing for a fertility network. I was a software developer. We were the kind of couple people called stable, quiet, mature. We had routines, grocery runs on Sundays, takeout on Fridays, low-stakes arguments about dishes and the thermostat, ordinary things, safe things. At least that was what I believed. He came home looking almost boyishly excited, the kind of excited that didn't fit the hour or the expression on his face. He dropped his keys into the ceramic bowl by the door and crossed the living room too fast, smiling in a way that made something in my stomach tighten before he even spoke. "I have news," he said. I looked up from the couch. "That sounds dangerous." He laughed like I was being playful. "No, seriously, it's actually incredible." That should have been the first warning, not the words. The glow on his face, the certainty, the way he had already decided I was going to be happy. I muted the TV. "Okay, what happened?" He sat beside me and turned toward me. "You know how Vanessa's been trying to have a baby?" Vanessa, his ex-girlfriend. I had met her a few times, enough to know she still lived in the margins of his life in a way I had never liked. She worked reception at a dental office, was single, and had been talking for years about wanting to become a mother, whether or not a relationship happened first. I kept my face neutral. "What about her?" His smile widened. "I helped her." I frowned. "With what?" "With having a baby." For a second, I thought he meant money. A loan, a referral, some reckless but ordinary favor. I was still standing in the doorway of a familiar kind of disaster. I had no idea I was about to step off a cliff. I said slowly, "What exactly do you mean, Ethan?" He leaned back, almost proud of himself. "Remember last year when you froze your eggs? When the doctor was worried that treatment for that infection might affect your fertility later?" Every muscle in my body locked. I stared at him. "What about them?" He either missed the change in my voice or didn't understand it. "I told you Vanessa couldn't afford IVF and donor costs through the clinic," he said, and I kept thinking how unfair that was. She wants this so badly, Claire. She always has. So I figured. He shrugged, smiling like he was telling me some sweet story. Why let perfectly viable eggs sit there when they could change someone's life? The room went silent in a way I can still feel physically, like all the air had narrowed to one sharp point in the center of my chest. He kept going. "I accessed your storage file. I told one of the lab staff the retrieval was for us, for future family planning. We got the eggs released. Vanessa used donor sperm. The transfer worked last month." He looked right at me, eyes shining. "She's pregnant." For 1 second, my brain refused to process the sentence. Then it hit all at once. "You did what?" His expression shifted, but only slightly, like he still couldn't understand why I wasn't overwhelmed by his generosity. "I helped Vanessa get pregnant," he said. "With your eggs." I stood so fast, the throw blanket slid to the floor. "No, Claire. No, you do not get to say that like it's normal." My voice came out flat, too flat. That was when he should have gotten scared. "Tell me exactly what you did." His forehead creased. "Why are you acting like this?" "Tell me." He let out an impatient breath, like I was ruining the moment. "I accessed your file, got the eggs released, and Vanessa completed the embryo transfer with donor sperm. She's about 8 weeks now." 8 weeks. 8 weeks ago, I had been in our kitchen making pasta while he kissed my shoulder and wrapped his arms around my waist like I was the safest place in his life. 8 weeks ago, he had already done this. I felt cold all the way through. "You stole my reproductive material," I said. His eyes rolled. "Claire, don't make it sound disgusting." "I don't have to make it sound like anything. It is what it is." He stood too, suddenly irritated. "I did something good. Vanessa was running out of options. She can't afford what clinics charge. You always say people should help when they can." I laughed once. It didn't sound human. "That was not help. That was theft." "They were your eggs," he snapped, "not your kidney. You weren't using them right now." I will remember that sentence for the rest of my life. Not because it was the cruelest thing he said, because of how casually he said it, Like the future I had paid to protect was a spare item in a cabinet. Like the most intimate medical decision of my life was something he had the right to repurpose. Ethan, I said, every word controlled. You accessed my medical records without permission. You lied to get my frozen eggs released. You gave them to another woman. Do you hear yourself? He crossed his arms. You're being dramatic. Dramatic? Yes. Vanessa is finally going to be a mother. I thought you'd understand how meaningful that is. I looked at him for a long second, and something inside me changed. Not shattered, shifted, like a lock turning. No, I said quietly. I understand something else. He blinked. What? That I've been living with someone who does not understand consent. That made him angry. Oh my God, don't do that, he said. Don't turn this into some moral performance. I pulled out my phone. His expression changed instantly. What are you doing? Recording. Claire, say it again. He took a step towards me. Turn that off. I hit record anyway and held the phone steady even though my hand was trembling. State your name. He stared at me like I had slapped him. State your name, Ethan. This is insane. Then it should be easy to deny, but you won't, because you know exactly what you did. He looked at the phone, then at me, and for the first time since he walked in, I saw it. Confusion giving way to fear. I kept my voice even. Tell me again how Vanessa got pregnant. He didn't answer. That was answer enough. I walked past him into the bedroom and shut the door. Then I called the first reproductive rights attorney I could find. Then the clinic. Then the legal department attached to the storage facility. And while the phone rang in my shaking hand, one thought kept repeating with horrifying clarity. He had not betrayed me in any ordinary way. He had taken something from my body, turned it into a child for another woman, and come home expecting gratitude. The first lawyer didn't pick up. The second didn't either. By the third call, my voice had stopped shaking. Not because I was calm, but because something colder had taken over. A kind of clarity that felt surgical. When the fourth line finally connected, I didn't ease into it. My boyfriend accessed my medical records without consent, I said. He removed my frozen eggs from storage and gave them to another woman who is now pregnant. I need to know what my options are. There was a pause on the other end. Not confusion, not disbelief. Recognition. Stay on the line, the receptionist said quietly. I'm transferring you to an attorney. That was the moment it stopped feeling like a nightmare I might wake up from, and became a case. I sat on the edge of the bed staring at the wall while I waited. My mind kept replaying his voice. You weren't using them right now, like it was trying to carve the sentence into something permanent. The attorney introduced himself as Daniel Reeves. His tone was calm, measured, the kind of voice that didn't waste words. Start from the beginning, he said. So I did. I told him everything. The egg freezing, Ethan's job in medical billing, the access, the lie, the transfer, the pregnancy, the recording. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then he exhaled slowly. All right, Claire, I need you to listen carefully. What you're describing is extremely serious. I figured. No, he said. You don't. This isn't just a relationship problem. This is potentially multiple criminal violations, unauthorized access to medical records, fraud, reproductive coercion, and depending on jurisdiction, theft of biological material. The words landed like weights. I pressed my fingers to my temple. So I'm not overreacting. Not even close. That should have made me feel vindicated. It didn't. It made everything worse. What do I do? First, preserve every piece of evidence you have. The recording, messages, timestamps. Do not confront him further without documentation. Second, report unauthorized access to the facility where your eggs were stored. Third, file a police report as soon as possible. I swallowed. And the pregnancy? That complicates things, he admitted. But from what you've told me, you did not consent to the use of your eggs. That will be central. I'll send you an intake form, he continued. Fill it out tonight. We'll schedule a formal consultation first thing in the morning. Okay. And Claire? Yes. Do not let anyone convince you this was a kind gesture. What was done to you is a violation. Full stop. I closed my eyes. Thank you. When the call ended, the silence in the room felt different. Heavier, but clearer. Like the fog had burned off, and all that remained was something sharp and unavoidable. I walked back into the living room. Ethan was still there. Of course he was. He was pacing now, running a hand through his hair, irritation written all over his face, like I was the one who had ruined the night. Are you done being dramatic? He asked. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at him. Really looked. At the man who had watched me go through hormones, injections, appointments. The man who had held my hand in sterile rooms while I signed forms that clearly stated who had the right to use my eggs. And still did this. I spoke to a lawyer, I said. His expression shifted. Already? Yes. That's insane, Claire. No, I said softly. What you did is insane. He laughed sharply. You're seriously turning this into a legal thing? It already is one. You're going to ruin lives over this. You already did. That made him snap. I helped someone, he shouted. Vanessa was desperate. She had no options. And you had something that could fix that. I had something that belonged to me. You weren't even using it. And that gave you the right to take it? He hesitated, only for a second, but it was there. That first small crack. I didn't take it, he said, weaker now. I redirected it. The word was so absurd I almost smiled. Redirected, I repeated, like it was a package that got delivered to the wrong address. He opened his mouth, then closed it. I stepped closer. Do you understand what consent is, Ethan? Of course I do. Then explain how you had mine. For the first time, he had no answer. And instead of stopping, he doubled down. You're making this bigger than it is, he said. Vanessa isn't asking you for anything. She's not expecting you to be involved. This doesn't even affect your life. I stared at him. That's where you're wrong. He frowned. How? Because you didn't just take my eggs. You took my choice. Something flickered in his face again. Uncertainty. Maybe even the first hint of fear. But it vanished just as quickly. You're spiraling, he muttered. No, I said. I'm documenting. I walked past him, grabbed a notepad from the kitchen counter, and started writing. Date, time, exact words. What are you doing now? He asked. Building a record. For what? For everything that happens next. He shook his head like I was the problem. You need to calm down. I didn't look up. Then you won't mind if I call the clinic and report unauthorized access. That stopped him. Claire. Or if I file a police report. Are you serious right now? I finally looked at him, completely calm. Yes. Then he grabbed his phone. I'm calling my mom, he said, like that would fix reality. I listened to him pace, voice turning defensive and aggrieved. She's freaking out about it. Yeah. No, I told you, she's acting crazy. Crazy. Of course. That was easier than admitting what he had done. I kept writing. Every word, every reaction, every detail. Because somewhere beneath the shock and the nausea, one thing had already settled into place with terrifying certainty. This was not going to end quietly, and neither was I. By morning, everything felt sharper. Not better, not calmer, just defined. I hadn't slept. I lay awake staring at the ceiling until sunlight filled the room and made it impossible to hide from what had happened. Ethan never came into the bedroom. At some point, I heard the front door open and close. No explanation, no apology, just absence. That, more than anything, told me exactly who he was. I showered, got dressed, and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open and my phone beside it. At 8:02 a.m., Daniel called. I reviewed your intake, he said. We're moving forward. There was no small talk. First step, file a police report today. This needs to be documented officially. Second, I'm drafting a cease and desist for Vanessa. She is not to contact you, not to claim anything related to your genetic material, and absolutely not to involve you in any legal or parental capacity. The precision in his voice made it real in a way nothing else had yet. And if she already has? Then we shut it down immediately. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. What about the clinic? I've already reached out to their legal department based on what you provided. They confirmed preliminary concerns about unauthorized access. There's going to be an internal investigation. A strange mix of relief and dread settled in my chest. Relief that I wasn't losing my mind. Dread because this was about to explode. Claire, he added, you need to prepare yourself. This won't stay contained. There will be legal consequences and personal fallout. I know. Do you? I thought about Ethan's face when I said the word consent, the way it never landed. I do now. The police station smelled like stale coffee and something metallic. The detective who took my statement listened without interruption for most of it. But when I explained how Ethan had accessed my records, how he had convinced a technician to release my eggs under false pretenses, he finally looked up. Wait, he said. He used his credentials to get into the system? Yes. And removed biological material stored under your name? Yes. He leaned back in his chair and exhaled. I've seen cases of reproductive coercion before. Birth control sabotage, condom tampering. But this? He narrowed his eyes slightly. This is different. Is that bad? It means this could go bigger than you think. There's potential fraud, unauthorized access to medical records, maybe even federal implications depending on how the facility is regulated. My fingers tightened in my lap. I just want to make sure I'm not legally tied to that child, I said. You never consented to any of this? Never. He nodded. That matters. He finished the report, handed me a copy, and told me someone would follow up. As I walked out of the station, the sunlight felt too bright, like the world was continuing normally in a way that didn't match what had happened to me. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring. Then a voicemail notification appeared. I stared at it for a long second before pressing play. Claire, it's Vanessa. Her voice was shaky. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know Ethan didn't have your permission. He told me you guys talked about it, that you were okay with helping. I would never have... She stopped, breath hitching. Please don't press charges. I'm 8 weeks pregnant. I can't lose this baby. Please. The message ended. I sat in my car with the phone in my hand, heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with fear anymore. She didn't know. Or she said she didn't. I replayed it once, then again. There was panic in her voice, yes, but also assumption. She had believed him, or wanted to. I forwarded the voicemail to Daniel without replying. His response came 10 minutes later. Good. This establishes knowledge of source. We'll use it. Do not engage. Simple, clinical, useful. Ethan came back that evening. I heard his key in his door, just as I sealed the last box. I had packed everything. Not mine. His. Clothes, shoes, chargers, laptop cables. All the small things he had spread through the apartment like he owned space by default. The boxes were stacked neatly by the door. He froze when he saw them. What is this? You're leaving. He let out a disbelieving laugh. You're kicking me out? You committed multiple crimes using my identity and my body, I said calmly. Yes, you're leaving. I pay rent here. Your name isn't on the lease. That doesn't... I wrote you a check for the remaining days this month. I held it out. He didn't take it. Instead, he looked down at his phone. His face changed. What did you do? He demanded. I filed a police report. His head snapped up. You actually went to the cops? You actually stole my eggs. That's not the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. His phone buzzed again. He read the message, and whatever anger he had left sharpened. They went to her work, he said. Detectives. They questioned her at her job. What the hell, Claire? What did you think was going to happen? I thought you'd act like a normal person. I stared at him. Define normal. Not this, he said, gesturing wildly. Not destroying people's lives over something that was meant to help. You keep saying that, I said. Like intention erases reality. It should matter. It doesn't. That was when the doorbell rang. We both turned. He frowned. Who was that? I didn't invite anyone, but somehow I already knew. When I opened the door, I wasn't surprised. His mother stood there, perfect posture, sharp eyes, already angry. She didn't wait to be invited in. This is ridiculous, she said, striding past me. Absolutely ridiculous. Ethan exhaled in relief. Mom. I heard everything, she said. Ethan called me. She turned to me, expression hardening. You're blowing this out of proportion. He was trying to help someone, a woman who couldn't afford to become a mother on her own. He stole my reproductive material. Oh, don't use those words, she snapped. You make it sound criminal. It is criminal. No, it's compassionate. I almost smiled. Same logic, same blindness. He accessed my medical records without permission, I said. He lied to obtain my frozen eggs. He gave them to another woman. That is not compassion. That is fraud. No one was hurt, she insisted. I held her gaze. I was. Silence stretched between us. Then Ethan spoke, softer now. What about the baby? I turned to him. What about it? It's going to be born, Claire. You're going to pretend it has nothing to do with you? I didn't hesitate. Yes. His mother scoffed. That's heartless. No, I said quietly. What's heartless is deciding someone else's body belongs to you. Neither of them had an answer to that. They just stood there looking at me like I had become unrecognizable. Maybe I had. Because the version of me that would have tried to explain, soften, or compromise. She was gone, and she wasn't coming back. They didn't leave right away. That was the part I hadn't expected. I thought once I said it clearly, calmly, something in him would finally click. That the weight of what he'd done would settle in and push him toward the door on its own. It didn't. Instead, Ethan just stood there, jaw tight, like he was waiting for me to crack first. I'm not leaving like this, he said. Then how are you leaving? His mother stepped in before he could answer. This is his home too. You don't get to throw him out because you're upset. I'm not upset. She frowned. You called the police. You packed his things. You're ending a 2-year relationship over something that hasn't even hurt you directly. That sentence landed harder than anything else she said. Not because it was true. Because it revealed exactly how little she understood. I took a slow breath. He accessed my medical records without consent. He removed my frozen eggs under false pretenses. He gave them to another woman who is now pregnant. That is not something you debate. That is something you act on. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. You're turning this into a legal script, Claire. This is real life. I know. That's why I'm treating it seriously. He stepped closer. Vanessa is scared. That's not my responsibility. She didn't know. I don't care what she knew or didn't know, I cut in. She used stolen genetic material. That's her reality to deal with. His mother shook her head. You're unbelievable. I met her gaze. No, I'm done being accommodating. Then Ethan's phone buzzed again. He glanced down and whatever he saw made his face go pale. What? His mother asked. He just stared at the screen for a beat too long. They sent a notice, he said quietly, from the clinic. I felt something tighten in my chest. What kind of notice? He looked up at me. Internal investigation. Unauthorized access to patient records. They're reviewing everything. Good, I thought. Out loud, I said nothing. His mother's confidence wavered for the first time. That doesn't mean anything yet. It means everything, I said. Ethan backed away slightly, like he needed space. This is spiraling. It didn't have to be like this. It did, I said, the moment you made that choice. Before he could answer, my phone rang. Unknown number again. I answered this time. Claire Bennett? A calm female voice asked. Yes. This is Darlene Hayes with Child Services. We've been notified of a situation involving a pregnancy that may be connected to you. I'd like to speak with you. Ethan froze. His mother went still. I closed my eyes briefly. Of course. It was already moving. Yes, I said. When? I can come by this evening if that works. I glanced at the two people still standing in my living room. That works. Darlene arrived exactly on time. Mid-40s, composed, observant, the kind of person who didn't need to raise her voice to control a room. Ethan and his mother were still there. They hadn't unpacked anything, hadn't moved the boxes. They had simply stayed, like witnesses to something they still thought they could influence. Darlene showed her ID, stepped inside, and took in the room with one slow sweep of her eyes. I assume this is related to the case. Yes. She sat down, opened a small notebook, and looked directly at me. I've reviewed the initial report, but I need your account in your own words. So I gave it to her. Not the sleepless night, not the internal collapse, just the facts. The freezing of my eggs, Ethan's access, the removal, the transfer, the pregnancy, the lack of consent. She listened without interruption, occasionally jotting something down. When I finished, she nodded slowly. This is highly unusual, but our focus is the child's welfare. Ethan shifted. Exactly. That's what I've been trying to explain. She held up a hand without looking at him. I'm speaking to her. He shut up. She turned back to me. Biologically, if the child is born and testing confirms a genetic connection to you, there are considerations we have to explore. My stomach dropped, but my voice stayed steady. I did not consent to the creation of that child. I understand that's your position. It's not a position, it's a fact. She studied me for a moment. Have you considered that the child may one day want to know their biological parent? The question hung there. Not accusatory, not emotional, just real. I took a breath. That child can know the truth. That they were conceived using stolen biological material, that I was the victim of a crime, that none of this was consensual. Ethan let out a small, frustrated sound. That's not how you talk about a kid. I didn't look at him. That's exactly how I talk about this situation. Darlene wrote something down. You seem detached. I am. Why? Because if I wasn't, I would break. Because if I let myself feel all of it at once, I wouldn't be able to function. Because someone had taken something deeply personal from me and tried to turn it into an obligation I never chose. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I said, because this child is not mine in any meaningful way. Silence again. Then Darlene closed her notebook. We'll continue monitoring the situation. You may be contacted again once the child is born. I understand. She stood, nodded once, and left. The door closed behind her with a soft click. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Ethan turned to me, and for the first time, something desperate finally broke through the anger. Do you hear yourself? He asked. You're talking about a baby, like it's nothing. I looked at him. No, I'm talking about what you did. He shook his head, running both hands through his hair. This is insane. Lawyers, police, child services, it's completely out of control. No, I said, it's consequences. His mother scoffed. You're going to regret this. Maybe, I said, but not for the reasons you think. Ethan stared at me for a long second. Then, finally, something shifted. Not understanding. Not remorse. Just realization. That I wasn't going to bend. That this wasn't going away. That I was never going to carry this quietly so he could feel better about himself. Without another word, he grabbed one of the boxes. His mother followed, tight-lipped and furious. They didn't say goodbye. They didn't apologize. They just left. And when the door shut behind them, the apartment felt bigger, colder. But for the first time since he had walked in with that smile, it felt like mine again. My phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Charges are being reviewed. Prepare for escalation. I stared at the screen, then set the phone down and leaned back against the wall. Because deep down I knew. This wasn't even the hardest part yet. The escalation came fast. It always does when private damage turns into public consequence. 2 days after Ethan moved out, Daniel called again. His tone was the same, calm, precise, but there was movement in it now. They're moving forward, he said. The DA's office is reviewing charges. Based on what we have, there's probable cause. For what exactly? Unauthorized access to medical systems, fraud, misuse of biological materials, potentially more, depending on what they find during the clinic's audit. I exhaled slowly. And Vanessa? If she knowingly used material obtained through fraud, she's exposed as well. It was one thing to say it to myself, another to hear it confirmed. This is going to get messy, isn't it? It already is, he said. Now we make sure it ends cleanly for you. It didn't stay contained. It never does. By the end of the week, people knew enough to start whispering. A coworker pulled me aside in the hallway. Hey, I heard something weird. Are you okay? I smiled politely. I'm handling it. That became my default answer. Friends split almost immediately. The ones who understood, and the ones who didn't. Claire, I get that it's messed up, one of them said over the phone, hesitant. But there's going to be a baby. Doesn't that change anything? No. A pause. That feels harsh. What feels harsh, I said, is having my body used without my permission. They had no response to that. Most people didn't, because acknowledging that meant sitting with something uncomfortable. Good intentions don't erase violation. The first official notice arrived the following Monday. I was at my kitchen table when the email came through. Formal investigation notice, compliance review. I opened it slowly. The clinic confirmed everything. Ethan had accessed my records using internal credentials. He had submitted a request under false pretenses. A technician, misled by that request, had released my eggs. There were timestamps, system logs, names, proof. Cold, undeniable proof. I forwarded it to Daniel. His reply came minutes later. This locks the chain of liability. Stay steady. 3 days later, Vanessa's lawyer made contact. Not through me, through Daniel. A demand letter. I read it twice to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding. They wanted monthly financial support, medical expenses, and unbelievably, they wanted me recognized as a biological parent once the child was born. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was so detached from reality my brain didn't know what else to do. I called Daniel immediately. She's asking for child support. I saw, he said dryly. That's delusional, he finished for me. Don't worry, I'll handle it. What's the response? Simple. She participated, knowingly or not, in the use of stolen biological material. There is no legal basis for her claim. If she pushes further, we escalate. Everything kept moving in one direction. Forward. They showed up at my work the next day. Security called me down to the lobby. The second I saw them, I knew it was going to be a scene. Ethan and Vanessa. She looked different. Not just physically, though the change was visible now. It was in her face. Fear. Real fear. Claire, she said the second I stepped forward, voice shaking. Please. You're not supposed to be here. Ethan stepped in front of her. We just need to talk. No, I said, you don't. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. I can't do this alone. You should have thought about that, I said, before you participated in something illegal. I didn't know, she cried. That's your problem. You trusted the wrong person. Ethan's voice rose. Stop talking to her like that. I looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time, I saw it plainly. Not confidence. Not righteousness. Panic. You need to leave, I said. That's my child in there, he snapped, pointing at Vanessa. No, I said quietly. That's the result of what you chose. Security stepped closer. You've been asked to leave, one of them said firmly. Ethan hesitated like he wanted to argue his way back into control. But there was nothing left to grab. Vanessa looked at me one last time. Not angry, not accusing, just desperate. Then they were escorted out. I filed another report that afternoon. Violation of no contact. More documentation, more evidence. Daniel approved. Every interaction strengthens your position, he said. That was what this had become. Not a relationship, not a betrayal. A case. The preliminary hearing was set for 6 weeks later. Daniel walked me through everything. Best case, worst case. Best case, he said. They plead to reduce charges. You get a clear legal ruling. No parental rights, no obligations, full separation. And worst? They minimize their charges, but you still walk away legally untangled. It's just messier. Messy I could live with. Tied to this, I couldn't. Ethan's parents tried one last time. They caught me outside a cafe. Not by accident. They were waiting. Please, his mother said, softer now, almost pleading. He's looking at serious consequences. This will follow him for the rest of his life. He made that choice. He made a mistake. No, I said. He made a decision. His father spoke for the first time. You're going to destroy him over this. I met his gaze. He destroyed this the moment he decided my body was his to use. They didn't follow me when I walked away. They just stood there, out of arguments, out of control. The night before the hearing, I sat alone in my apartment. No music, no TV, no distractions. Just silence. And for the first time since all of this began, I let myself feel something deeper than anger. Grief. Not for Ethan, not even for the relationship. For the version of my life that had existed before this. The one where trust was simple. Where love didn't come with evidence logs and legal strategy. Where my body was mine in a way I never had to consciously defend. That version was gone, and there was no getting it back. But as I sat there, staring at my faint reflection in the window, another thought settled in. I hadn't lost everything. I still had one thing left. Control. And the next day, that was exactly what I was going to take back. The trial didn't explode the way I had imagined. It didn't need to. There were no dramatic outbursts, no last-minute confessions, no theatrical reversals, because the truth had already done the damage. By the time we entered that courtroom, everything was documented. Timestamps, access logs, my recording, the clinic's findings, Vanessa's voicemail. There was nothing left to argue, only consequences to assign. Ethan didn't look at me when I walked in. Not once. Vanessa sat a few seats away, hands folded tightly over her stomach, eyes fixed downward like if she didn't move, maybe none of it would be real. Daniel leaned toward me. Stay focused, he said quietly. This is the part where it ends. I wasn't sure that word meant what it used to. It took 4 months to get there. 4 months of filing, statements, delays, negotiations. 4 months of living in a version of my life that felt like it belonged to someone else. And then, finally, resolution. Ethan took a plea deal. Felony theft, misuse of medical records, reduced charges in exchange for admission, 2 years probation, heavy fines, mandatory counseling, no prison, but a record that would follow him everywhere. Vanessa followed not long after. Conspiracy, receiving stolen biological material, probation, financial penalties. No clean slate, no pretending it hadn't happened. And then there was the part that mattered most. The civil agreement. Signed, filed, final. I wasn't listed as a parent. Not on any document, not on any future claim. No rights, no obligations. The judge's statement was clear, precise, almost clinical. The conception occurred through non-consensual use of biological material. No legal parental responsibility is assigned. Just like that, the line was drawn. Permanent. The baby was born 3 months later. I didn't hear about it directly. I saw it in the paperwork. A girl. Healthy. That was all. No photos, no calls, no attempts to reach me. Because they couldn't. The agreement made sure of that. Ironclad, Daniel had called it. Vanessa lost her job. Not immediately, but once the charges became public, her employer let her go. Ethan moved back in with his parents. Temporary work, no stability. Every application shadowed by the same question he would never fully escape. Have you ever been convicted of a felony? Yes. People still had opinions. They always do. You were too harsh. It was complicated. That baby didn't do anything wrong. I heard all of it. From acquaintances, from old friends, even from my own mother. You could have handled it differently, she said once, carefully. I looked at her for a long moment. I was the one it happened to. She didn't bring it up again. I lost people. Not everyone, but enough. The ones who couldn't separate discomfort from truth. The ones who thought boundaries should become negotiable if the outcome made them emotional. They faded out of my life quietly, and I let them. Therapy helped. Not in some dramatic overnight way. Just slowly, piece by piece. Understanding what had been taken. Understanding why it mattered. Understanding that what I felt wasn't overreaction. It was response. There were nights I still woke up with that same tightness in my chest. What if it hadn't gone my way? What if I had been tied to something I never chose? What if my future had been rewritten without me? Those thoughts didn't disappear, but they got quieter. I moved. New apartment, new job, new routines. Not because I was running, because I was choosing. Choosing distance, choosing safety, choosing a life that wasn't defined by what happened in that apartment on that one night. Daniel checked in once after everything was finalized. Everything's secure, he said. If they try anything, contact, claims, anything, you come straight back to me. I will. And Claire? Yes? You handled this exactly right. I didn't know how to answer that, so I just said thank you. A letter came a few weeks later. Not to me, to Daniel, forwarded with a short note. Your choice if you want to read it. I opened it. Ethan, apology, regret, therapy, understanding now what he did wrong, hoping someday for forgiveness. I read it once, then I closed it, because forgiveness is for accidents. What he did wasn't an accident. It was a decision, then another, then another. Each one made with full belief that he had the right. Sometimes I think about the child, not with longing, not with anything maternal, just awareness. She'll grow up one day. She'll ask questions, and eventually she'll learn the truth. That her existence began with something complicated, something ugly, something not chosen by everyone involved. That's sad, but it isn't mine to fix. It never was. The legal part is over. The emotional part takes longer. Trust doesn't rebuild on command. Some days it doesn't feel like it rebuilds at all. But then there are other days, quiet ones, normal ones, where I make coffee in my own kitchen, sunlight hitting the counter just right, and there's no pressure in my chest. No fear, no weight, just space. And in that space, there is something I didn't have before. Freedom, not the kind that comes with a perfect ending. The kind that means no one else gets to write the story of my body for me again. And some days that's enough.